Three, two, one. Well, Dick, here's the deal. I'm the best there is, plain and simple. I mean, I wake up in the morning, I piss excellence. I'm just a big hairy American winning machine. If you ain't first, you're last. Ah, hey, didn't see you there. I'm Will, current and former fantasy football league champion, and I feel it is my responsibility to help some of you guys out here. So I've actually had a lot of people or a few people ask me this. What is fantasy football? Well, as much as I wish I could sit here and say that it is just, you know, people in armor and shooting fireballs at each other, playing football, that's not it. Fantasy football is basically a competition between people which we select imaginary teams from the current NFL rosters. And we score points based on their stats. Pretty easy. The rules are pretty simple because, you know, a lot of people still don't really understand the concept of it, but it's a pretty easy thing to understand once you really understand it. So it's kind of like if you were to make your own NFL team. It's actually very simple to that. So basically, you take players from the current NFL roster and we're going to build the best team possible. That's basically what it is. Pretty easy. So this is something that I would really say that I would really take into consideration when you are going to be selecting your team for the first time, especially when you're making your draft. This is really what you want to look at. So your website is always going to look different than mine. Probably really going to depend on which website you use, whether it's going to be NFL, Yahoo. There's a bunch of other ones out there. What else have I used? I've used NFL before in the past. ESPN has them, but yeah. So any website will look different, but the same. It's going to have the same concept to it. So it's always if you go to your league scoring and settings, it'll always have something like this where it'll tell you what the roster is going to look like. So if you take a look here, this is what my league is set up to be. So this is how many positions I'm allowed. Okay, so if you take a look, it's a QB, wide receiver, running back, tight end. So if you look here, the WRT, this right here is a special position. This is what we call the flex. What this means right here, so the WRT stands for wide receiver, running back, or tight end. Okay, so it basically what this means is that any one of these players, wide receiver, running back, or tight end, is able to fill this roster position in your lineup. Okay, so if you actually take a look here on this that I found, it's pretty easy to understand, like I said, once you get a grasp on it. So certain leagues are also going to have like certain roster styles. So there's going to be your standard roster, which is how my league is set up, which is what I showed you. And then you have IDP rosters. IDP is individual defensive positions. And if you want to do that, by all means, like more power to you on that. Like, but personally for me, like it's already enough when you have to take care of your standard league. But people that do IDP, respects, you know what I'm saying? Like respect. But yeah, so if you take a look here, this is the positions legend that you would use for your position. So like I was talking about, QB, quarterback. So what that means is only quarterbacks are eligible to play that position. So wide receiver, running back, any wide receiver or running back would be able to fill this position. So in my league, we only have these two positions right here. We added this because it was just like we wanted to add a little bit more spice to our league. We call this the super flex. We've been doing this for probably 3 years now, probably 4 years, and we've enjoyed it. It's kind of add a little twist to it. So, but yeah, so these four types of positions here are flexes. My league personally is running these ones. Most normal leagues will only run this one. That's just what I've seen. So Obviously, you do get a kicker and defense. So if you are running a standard roster league, this is what you would be using right here. This is your normal people that you have to worry about. If you're running the IDP, you have to take into account all of these. Or sorry, not the bench is also any player, but that's just your bench. And if you're doing IDP, you have to take into account all of these positions on top of your offensive positions. So it's a lot more players that you have to worry about. But yeah, so that's basically the rules and the type of rosters that you will run into. It's super easy once you understand that, okay, this is who I have to worry about when I'm drafting. Now you can look into the scoring. So this is really important, in my opinion, is the scoring. That you have to know this by the back of your hand, man. You have to know the scoring. This is huge. When you're talking about wanting to just be a normal player versus like a great fantasy football player, this is what you need to know, is the scoring. I've asked multiple people who have been in fantasy football for years, and all of them has said the same thing. Know your scoring. Because this is going to take your standard, like your just normal outlook of, I want to pick this person or I want to pick this person, goes into, I need to pick this guy first because he is more important than this position or this player. It's much more important, especially when coming from your draft, because when you're looking at the draft, if you look at just like, oh, that player's good, he's gonna give me a lot of points. It's like, no, we need to be picking this player right now, because if we don't, we're gonna potentially lose out on this many points at the end of the season. So I've asked multiple people, and all of them had said the same thing, that know your scoring. This is the breakdown of my league scoring. It's pretty easy. It's pretty standard. We didn't really change anything, obviously. So passing yards, it's 25. So for every 25 passing yards any one of my positions throw, obviously that's going to be mainly our quarterback that's going to be doing that, but at the same time, your running back can potentially get it if they run that. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's very not possible. So for every 25 passing yards, my QB will get a point. Okay, for every passing touchdown, my QB gets 4 points. For every interception, my QB gets -1 point. Rushing yards, 10 yards per point. It's pretty standard. Rushing touchdown, 6. Reception. So the reason why I was saying that reception or know your scoring, for example, is because sometimes this makes a huge difference. There is some leagues that is standard where you don't get it. You do get some points, but you don't get some points per reception. But if you have a PPR league, what that stands for is points per reception. That is very important to know, because normally if you run a PPR league, this number is going to be 1 instead of 0.5. So obviously that's going to say, okay, well, wide receivers are definitely going to be a better draft pick in this league because you get a point per reception on top of the 6 yards per point, or 10 yards per point in receiving yards, and then 6 points for every receiving touchdown. You know, that makes a big difference. I've won games by a few points. I've lost games by 0.0 points before. I've lost a game, I think it was like 0.04 points. So every point matters. Every point matters. So that's why I always will tell people, know your scoring. Know who you're going to be drafting at what time, because it makes a huge difference at the end. So, which kind of brings me to my next point of, when you are thinking about your draft, because all this stuff that I'm telling you right now, this is all going to be pre-draft. You have to know these things before the draft, so that you can really utilize it during the draft. When you go into the draft, don't go into it thinking, I gotta pick this guy. He's my favorite player. He's my favorite player. He's a great player. He's gonna do good for me. Don't do that. Don't do that. Trust me. Okay. Coming from a guy who's played probably... When did I start? When did I start? I'm trying to think here. I think my account on Yahoo started in 2011. I've obviously been playing. I played NFL fantasy on there before this, and then I played a few ones other this. So let's just say more than 10 years. So 10 seasons of fantasy football. It's not worth it. I've chosen a lot of my favorite teams. I've chosen a lot of my favorite players. It creates like this conflict of interest, if you will, because if you choose somebody from your favorite team, there's always going to be that thing in the back of your mind and saying, oh, they're going to do good today because I know they're going to do good today. They're my favorite team. I know they're going to do good. When in reality, you're kind of just playing yourself. Obviously, okay, if you choose a great player from a great team, I'm just going to let's go to the player list here, This is another thing. This player list is available on as soon as you launch. As soon as your league is set up and the scoring is set up, you can look at this. Like right now, I'm looking at the 2020 season total, but I mean, I could look at everything on this. I could look at the projections for next season, but we're just going to look at the 2020 season. So based on my scoring settings, this right here is the best players from last season. So let's just take Aaron Rodgers, for example. Aaron Rodgers, he's a great player. Great player. Does he have his off games? Of course. Every player does. Back in the day, man, I chose a lot of especially when Carolina was doing really good. Carolina's my favorite team. And I've been a Carolina fan ever since they were, only winning 1-2 games in a season. But I back in the day, I would choose players, especially when they were winning. Obviously, I would choose some players from that team, and it was literally every single time that I would want them to do well or need them to do well, they wouldn't. So it's you can't always rely on picking your favorite players. Pick off a strategy. Think about this. You have to look at everything. Look at the matchups. It's all out there. The statistics don't lie. It's all out there, and that's basically what this game is just statistics. So there's a few things that I would like you to remember from this first episode. Is that when you go into the draft, look at everything. When you make your league or you join the league, look at the scoring settings. Look at the scoring. So this is one thing I didn't talk about, but this is what our league has set up. So this is based off of, so if you look here, completions will give a quarterback 0.5 points, but incomplete passes will give them negative 0.92. This is something that we've added into our league to maintain a 60%. Our QBs were pretty strong, so this was put in there so that the QBs can maintain a 60% completion value throughout and if they make more than 60%, then they will get points. But if they don't, they'll lose points. So that was something that we've added in there. But like I said, just know your scoring settings. So obviously, like if this is something that's in your league, then you want to look at more accurate quarterbacks. You know, you don't want to be looking at gunslingers because obviously, you know, if they're great, they're great. But if you have something like this put into the league, you need to be looking at something more than just touchdowns and high yardage situations, because this can make or break you. So other than scoring, understand how many players you have, because if you have something like this also makes a huge difference. So in your mind, you should be looking at this player list, saying, "Hey, look at this analysis that we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 out of the first 25 are quarterbacks." See now, but this is something that you really need to think about. Are QBs really valuable in the season? This is a huge difference. You never know how a person is going to perform. You never know. So QBs, even though they are shown to be at the top here as some of the top players to be picked in fan points, just compare. This is talking about last season. These were the top performers of fantasy football with our scoring settings. This makes a huge difference. So QBs, even though they are at the top here, not the greatest to be choosing for at the first pick every time. Now, if we take a look here, the first person that is not a QB, running back, wide receiver, tight end. That's really what you want to be looking for. First few rounds. You know, but when you just join the league, just as soon as you get the chance, you definitely need to take a look at what positions we're working with, what the scoring settings are, because this is going to make a huge difference. So you know what? That's going to do it for today's episode of Knowing Fantasy Football. I'm going to be here taking questions whenever y'all need it. So until next time, if y'all have any questions, you can hit me up. Let me know. Because I'm more than happy to answer any fantasy football questions. I love fantasy football. I'm the 2-time Fantasy Football League champion. Don't you forget it. Until next time, folks, y'all have a great rest of your day.